I was just wondering about your sort of journey from artist to gallerist, and what it seems like a real strength to have had that experience as an artist and then move into, you know, running a gallery. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I initially started my arts career at Whitireia in Porirua with Peter Deckers in the jewellery department, and I went on to do a degree in applied arts at Whitireia, and then I exhibited and worked as a jeweller for a few years before I did my masters at Massey University in 2012. And then, what are we, 2020? So for maybe 7 years I kind of worked as an artist, a young artist. I did some kind of residencies, and I did several projects and exhibitions kind of in New Zealand and overseas. But I also worked in the arts administration. So I worked at the Wellington Sculpture Trust, and I went on to work for Malcolm Brow, who is an art collector. And then Malcolm needed a new office, and so while I was working for him, he moved into 30 Courtney Place. And it was at this location where this really great gallery space kind of became available, and that's when 30 Upstairs started. So that was actually while I was doing my masters, but I went on to kind of work with Malcolm to open this gallery, and which lasted for kind of 4.5 years. And so there I learned kind of how to run a gallery. I was the manager there and put on exhibitions, and we worked with kind of over 150 young artists. And after that closed, I spent a bit of time thinking about whether to be an artist or open my own gallery, and which was not something I'd ever thought about doing before opening a dealer gallery. But I'm someone who likes autonomy, and to have that, you can't work in a public space, and so that led me down this kind of dealer path. And when I decided that I couldn't do my own practice and a gallery and do them both well. So I decided to just focus on the gallery and leave my art practice on the side.
And like 30 Upstairs was a lot about young artists, and this gallery, it's not the only thing you do, but I wonder how that sort of features in the sort of kaupapa of the place, like the idea of representing young artists that perhaps haven't been represented by other galleries. Yeah,
definitely. So as you say, at 30 Upstairs, we mainly worked with emerging artists or recent arts graduates from the art schools. And kind of moving into the gallery, and at the time we opened, I had a business partner called Layla O'Brien. That was definitely something that we were interested in doing, is working with young artists and kind of building the gallery with the kind of artists kind of building their careers and kind of helping them with that.
And I just wonder, like, your experience, you were in that position once, you were a young artist, and I wonder how that sort of features with how you support young artists now.
Yeah, I just know that it's hard work. It takes a long time. You have to keep at it, but you also need experience. And so I'm quite aware of perhaps that there's a gap between being a student and finishing art school and then kind of being somewhat more professional to go into a dealer gallery space. And now that I've worked with so many young artists, I'm aware that there's perhaps a level of kind of professionalism that takes time to kind of develop your practice, like after finishing art school. So that's definitely something that I know I've experienced myself, but I've also seen it with working with so many young people.
Oh, it just seems like such a strength. Jamie's work is in here at the moment. Could you talk a little bit about how you first encountered it and what excites you about it?
Yeah, sure. I actually received a couple of phone calls from quite senior practitioners who I respect, alerting me to this young ceramic artist who was actually having a show at Precinct at 35. It was maybe 18 months ago, or 2 years ago, I can't remember. And they said I should go and have a look, and that she would, while she had a great show at Precinct, she would potentially be interested in moving into a more of a dealer relationship. And so we had a look at her show and we met her, and then we had an exhibition with her 15 months ago. And what I love about Jamie's work, and kind of Jamie herself, is her work's so organic and related to kind of nature and the colours she uses. And when you meet Jamie and talk to her, you will see that that is her. She's got kind of, she embodies her work, and her work kind of is her. So that's often what I like in the artists I work with, is that kind of they've got this integrity about them. And so I definitely believe that Jamie has that. And also what's really important to me with the artists that I work with is building a relationship. And I'm sure you've kind of talked to other dealers about that, but you do think about that when you're deciding who to work with, is this long-term relationship. Like getting into an intimate relationship. You want that to work for both people. So, Jamie and I get on very well, and hopefully we can have a kind of mutually beneficial relationship for a long time. So yeah, and kind of as you see with her work, it's a real kind of push with ceramics. She's interested in making works that have movement and are soft and delicate, but also works that are really dense and heavy, which those two things are not often looked at with people making ceramics, and definitely not that I've seen with kind of younger people working with ceramics. But Jamie is, she's very good at that, and she's a bit of an old soul, Jamie. She's lovely, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us this week.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
So good to see you, and thank you for this wonderful work. This gallery space is particularly good for this work, and I'm just wondering, could you talk a little bit about your work in this particular gallery?
Yeah, well, I think the thing I love most about working in this gallery is the beautiful windows with the natural lighting coming through. That really shows the surface on my ceramics well. The glazes come up really beautiful natural light compared to artificial light, and also the rocks and things like that are mixed through the clay. Like they have often a bit of a shine to them, and that comes up really beautiful in the light as well. I also really like the flow through of the gallery, how you kind of you walk in and the space changes as you walk around, and you can kind of create a bit of a like a journey through, and I really love that about the space as well.
Yeah, it's magnificent. I was wondering, there's this beautiful piece behind us, and I was just wondering if you'd be willing to talk a little bit where it came from, the materials that you used. It sits in quite a different sort of lightness and weight. Yeah, tell us about this one.
Yes, this piece is following on from some pieces I've been making for a long time with bells and chain together. I really love how it has lightness and movement to it. The bells ring, and the chain piece I originally designed that way of building because I was kind of making mobiles, and I wanted to use completely ceramic but have pieces with movement. So it's how I started creating these. I really like exploring the lightness and the fragility of ceramics versus some of my heavier pieces, and so these pieces are really important to me in this show of showing that end of my work.
Awesome, that's great. This work is different from the work we were talking about before. One of the things Jhana said about your work, which I thought was really interesting, was the way that it intersects with the natural world. So some of the formations in this work are reminiscent of what you might come across just naturally, but obviously you've worked it into these shapes. Could you talk a little bit about that intersection with this work and perhaps the show more broadly?
Yeah, for sure. Well, this piece is a really good example of that. It has rocks I've collected in nature. I've collected these stones in river sand from my favourite waterhole in the Karangahaki Gorge and mixed that through slurry and over the piece, so it does have actual rocks in it. It's also, these pieces are inspired from coastal walks around beaches and things, and I love the combinations of rocks. I spend a lot of time getting inspiration from those rocks. So the natural world, rocks and things, does have a big inspiration for me. Also through like the stool pieces I make and like those bigger, stronger forms. I really love, I guess, how in nature there's like boulders or bigger cliffs or things like that, but around them like the foliage and more delicate pieces or smaller pebbles. So I love the balance that nature has, and I think I do try to replicate that also in my work. Yeah.
Could we talk about that stool piece?
Yeah.
Jhana said to me that that's one of the most difficult things you've made. And could you talk a little bit about what was challenging about the construction of it?
Construction, that was quite tricky, that one. Making the oval cutout through the centre, I had to like fortify the sides and still like let the air flow through. So it had a lot of learning in how to fortify the piece. It's all completely hollow. So yeah, it was quite tricky to, in a drying time, I have to turn it to dry it, and it takes several months or a few months to dry. Yes, so it's quite time consuming, those pieces. Yeah.
One of the things I love about this collection of your work is the way that it comes together as something so much more as a whole than the sum of its parts kind of thing. Could you talk a little bit about the colours and the glazes that are in the show? Yeah.
So for the show, I was really drawn to rich colours that like the rich blues and the star pillar and the red piece in the table and the rich greens as well. I also, the darker browns I was really leaning into. I was wanting to show like the, I guess really the clay, like the earthier tones of that. I wanted the pieces to be quite deep, that you could really be with or stare into and have, that kind of a feel about them. Yeah.
It's such a magnificent show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really, it's just wonderful. Thanks so much.
Oh, thanks, Beth.
Awesome.
Yeah.